Hello and welcome to the final episode of Season 1 of the NewIn Podcast. I'm Hannah Pendlebury.
And I'm Ilana Miller. And Cathi usually opens each episode with a fun fact about herself.
But we're not that interesting.
And we can say whatever we want, she can't stop us. So we'll tell you a couple of facts about Cathi and you can work out whether they're true or false.
So, did you know that Cathi is actually a world champion swan wrangler?
I'd heard the rumours. She also owns a number of pedigree ferrets. I've heard that she baths daily in champagne and she can even open wine with her toes.
See, you know that one though, if you've ever been on a night out with her.
You do, yeah. For the past 6 months, we've had the absolute pleasure of talking to both people that are new into financial services
and those that have taken the plunge to launch their own businesses.
And it's easy to just talk about how to attract new talent into the profession.
But it's rare to actually get the honest, true tales of those in the thick of it actually doing the work right now.
It's been genuinely fascinating to speak to real people who've changed careers and joined financial services, to hear the thrills and the spills, the highs and the lows, what genuinely has been really tough, what might some of the barriers have been, those wobbles, how important community was, and the joy that they've found.
And my conversations have left me wondering if it should be easier to get CAS status and if it's actually a bit of business prevention going on there.
And of course, we answer the big question of, are people still just falling into finance or are they actively choosing it as a career?
So stay tuned for this very special episode. Up top, that was brilliant. It's just really not that hard,
It wasn't that hard. I don't know what Cathy's talking about.
Oh.
Hello and welcome to the NewIn Podcast. That's far too slow. Welcome to the second episode, episode 3, episode 4, episode 5. Pro now, Anna. Oh, episode 6. Am I clapping right? Am I clapping, or like, is there a certain way to clap? 7, 8, 9.
Well, we could do a Brittany looking up from the floor.
Oh, we could. Don't think we should. I'm Cathi Harrison and I forgot what I was going to say. Okay. He has chosen the somewhat unique approach of moving away from a career in finance to into a career. No.
Just ask me yourself the question of like,
So let's hear to. It's almost like the more prepared, the harder it is. Like. Need to do my fact. A little interesting fact. Okay. Have you noticed that on all of the videos I start like that? Hi. Hiya. Hey. All right. Cool. All right. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Whew.
Oh, that's so good.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us for the final episode of Series 1 of the NewIn Podcast. In some ways it feels like it's just flown by. In other ways, I can't believe it's been like 6 months. It's absolutely crazy, but it has been so much fun. And for the final episode, we thought we'd go a little bit retro and go in person instead of online. So making the journey up to the sunny offices in Darlington, my wonderful co-hosts, Ilana and Hannah, thank you very much for joining us. What we wanted to do was just share a little bit about what we've taken from the episodes over, well, the last 10 episodes over the last 6 months, some of the key learnings from it, some of the key themes that have come out, and just some of the big sexy topics that we've all raised. Right, so we'll dive in a little bit. Get back on your 5 interviews. What's kind of the main theme that has jumped out for you that you came across?
You know, I absolutely love the richness of their experiences. They talk about love and loss and heartbreak and joy and their skills, the jobs they've done, and the thrills and spills, basically. Everything that brings, you can hear when they're talking about their journey into planning. You really feel exactly why the whole profession and industry is so keen to get more diversity, to look at career changes, to look at people from different backgrounds, education, experience, jobs, because they bring so much. You know, I could hear the curiosity, the empathy, the relatability. You've got Ola, 28 years old, loves socialising, a woman who loves to travel. She just bought her first home. She'd learnt how to invest. She got her sister investing at 18. Imagine the compounding on that. I mean,
that's a sexy topic.
Yeah,
compounding.
sexy. It's new merch. Imagine the compounding on that. There you go. So, but, you know, brilliant example of what she can bring, and she can really step into a space that we're desperate to fill. And there was just some real brilliant quotes, like moments, things they said that, like, you know, really struck me.
Yeah.
That I probably won't ever forget.
Yeah. Tell me one.
Do it now.
Yes,
like Simon
yeah.
talks about, you know, being a career changer at 50. And we joke, don't we, in the episode, you know, he called it a midlife crisis. I was like, you know, a lot of people just get a motorbike, you know, a very young girlfriend, who knows, but you decide to be a financial planner and go from being a wine merchant to financial planner. But he says, you know, he talks about his father, sadly, you know, in a care home, and how that, you know, his eyes were on the end.
Yeah.
And he says there isn't, you know, there isn't going to be all of this time. Do it now.
Yeah.
You know, and as a wine merchant, I said that kind of links to this quote. People talk about drink the champagne. They say when people get a nice bottle, they just leave it on the shelf. They think, you know, I'll save it for a special occasion. And we were saying, no, open it. What, you know, if it's a Tuesday, it's Monday night,
special,
just drink the champagne, you know.
Yeah,
So
I
there was that do it now mentality that they all had.
But do you get much of that, Hannah, from advisors? Because when we run our advisor boot camps through the foundation, a lot of the time they'll look back and say, like, maybe there was a hesitancy of doing it, and once they have, they're like, never regretted it, never, you know, if anything, wished I'd done it sooner, wished I had had to do it now. Did you get that kind of theme coming up in your conversations?
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of the opposite. It's not really so much a do it now. It's way more of a considered approach, I think, is what I found in mine. I mean, definitely was talking to our Simon Fettrell. He was saying actually it was a very, very long process and very considered, and actually him and his business partner were working in roles together and having loads and loads of conversations. There are some people that I've met through the foundation who have been a bit more kickstartery, go-gettery, and I think it is those folks who've maybe been less in contact with regulation for a shorter period of time.
Just less ground down.
Yeah, and I kind of less, because I think when you get into that mindset, in one of the episodes with Bernabe, there's sort of this tension between people that are coming in that are really, you know, have a bit more of a creative mindset or come from a different background. I think he's, if I can think about it, I think he's the only proper career changer that we had on the kind of advisor side of things, setting up the practices. And so, yeah, I think there's a bit more of a, once you understand the different landscapes, the different options, because it can be a bit overwhelming. And certainly one of the foundation modules that seems to be most helpful is the decision making between which of the paths should I choose when I'm setting up on my, you know, my own practice. You can get really kind of bogged down in it, especially if you're going DA and taking that risk because you want that control. And I think, yeah, there's lots of people that because on our side of the kind of the founder interviews, it was more of a, lots of, I'm not going to call them control freaks, but people that really are interested in the detail and getting stuff right. But what was really apparent is that it was all in aid of the client outcome. It wasn't I want to control the universe because I'm a little bit that way. It's I want to get this right because I'm so passionate about getting it right for my clients. And that puts the industry in good stead, I think. That's
exactly what we get for people coming through, like the incubator, the boot camp in particular, that thinking of starting their own business. It's never, I want to start my own business because I think I can earn more money. It's, I want to start my own business because I don't feel like I can service my clients in the way that I believe is the right way, and they're willing to take that like leap of faith, that potential income impact, that kind of extra pressure and stress on themselves to start their own business just so that they can do the right thing for clients. And I just think when you're kind of working with those kind of advisors, that's where it's like it's a good part of finance. Did just when you mentioned Bernabe and that kind of challenge he had of kind of coming in and bringing this kind of creative element, what's both of your opinions on like the reality of the theory of we would like this creativity and this experience, and the reality of, but then there's like a certain element of conformity needed from a regulatory perspective? How do you see that playing out?
We spoke about that actually to Scott, because everybody says we want to be modern, we want to do things differently, but then the reality is I do hear a lot, particularly from firms who want to do that, so particularly in things like social media, where they recognise that the influencers are filling a space that they might not be doing, and that's great if what they're offering is offering good outcomes, but we know that that isn't the case with everyone. But some of the people are finding that they've got all the skills, ability, exciting ideas to do it, but they are hampered by the traditional and the long-standing views from compliance, not kind of really engaging with the FCA and looking at the difference between financial promotion and non-financial promotion and weighing up risk. So I think that is one of the problems. But then I speak to other people like Scott, who has joined a firm that he says is progressive, forward-thinking, modern, innovative, and so it's matched what he wants. So that's probably one of the takeaways for the new talent cohort, because they're generally going to look and work at a firm initially. That they really interview the firms as well as being interviewed themselves, because sometimes you're just so desperate to be hired after changing careers and having your income impacted.
And I've known it happen. There's nothing worse than attracting new people to come into finance, they get the qualifications, then they end up in a company which is like the antithesis of, everything that we're kind of trying to see in financial services. It's very old school, it's very salesy, and then those people go, oh, this isn't what I thought finance was going to be, and gone, all right, no, and gone back to their other jobs, and like, what an absolute loss. So I think you're right, there is inevitably an urge to think, oh, if I've made this change, I need to get into anything, but one advice firm's very different to another.
We don't want to attract that innovation, then crush it out of them.
How do you see that kind of playing out?
In terms of the regulation side and the fear element, there are compliance people and there are compliance people. In the same way we talk about maybe they're different breeds of financial planners, and that's brilliant because obviously there's different people that need to be looked after. But I think there is a lot of fear factor with the risk concept, and it's also, if you don't understand it properly, how can you manage it? And I think there's a lack of interest for some folks in kind of from the compliance side. They're not really interested in that because they don't see the value, they don't see the potential, and they don't see kind of the plugging the gap on the education piece either, because I think there's a lot of really great work that can be done. But I think something that's always frustrated me is you look at what the professional bodies are putting out, what educational content they've been doing for the past however long. I mean, so I joined financial services in 2014, and I was banging on about when it used to be called Twitter, the concept of like, oh, you could do stuff on here, and it was always doors slammed in the face, and there's a point where you just go, all right, then there's no point, which again, it like sort of dampens that. But I think, if you can find people who are open-minded, that can give you that concept of, okay, here's the sensible way to go about this, here's the best way, and that actually can actually really impact people. But then you look at the FCA and the fact that, trying to create offerings to the public that aren't regulated, that can be one-stop shop, that can try and plug the advice gap. I think sometimes you look at what the advice is there and what the guidance is and what the regulation is, and you think, is this a question we can answer in the near future? Because I think that's what, maybe for me, if I was working in compliance, I would be a bit like all the kind of guidance and what's, what's proper, what's not. It's a minefield. I don't envy that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, so actually, you've both kind of touched on something I was going to ask. So the whole sort of ethos of the Verve Foundation, when I first started it, was here's all the challenges and frustrations that we've talked about in finance since I got into it in, I can't remember when, a long time ago, 2007. We've just talked about the same problems constantly. So instead of talking about the problems, what can we actually do to try and kind of fix it? But the reality is that the Verve Foundation's teeny tiny. We exist just from sponsors, we're in London. We're still trying to have an impact, and quite a big impact, but relative to what we are. So with all the challenges that we've talked about, whose responsibility is it, HIND, not just us, to kind of challenge some of this and to change the perception of finance, to make it easier for people to come in, to make it easier for people to start their own businesses? So we mentioned the professional bodies, we mentioned the FCA. We mentioned almost like the opposite of the naysayers, like the press and the trade press. Do the companies that are in finance that are much bigger than the foundation and have much more money than the foundation, like where do we think the responsibility lies to make some of these changes?
I absolutely think everybody. The way culture, when we talk about culture, we say it's everybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wrote something a while ago about something similar really about how we solve some of the challenges in the profession, and likened it to this Gestalt theory, which talks about how the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
And I likened it to, because I grew up in the Isle of Man, obviously I talked about farming and agriculture. But many, many years ago, we did have a challenge with food security.
Yeah.
You know, farmers were the ones that were sowing and growing and preparing food for sale. And it wasn't really a problem they could solve on their own, where we're like, grow more food, work more hours. But if you think about that chain, you had manufacturing that developed tractors and combine harvesters to make it easier. You had tech companies that started creating satellite technology that could look from the air and zone in and tell you exactly what needed to happen. And I won't bore you with the whole chain, but you can see how our food security challenges and issues and problems and growth of the world couldn't have been solved by just one role. It took everybody in the chain.
I feel like the foundation is one of those farmers, and like we're working so hard,
Yes,
but
exactly that.
you need the rest as well. One of the themes that came up during an episode, it was almost accidental because you'd interviewed Scott, who had gone from supermarket to paraplanner to trainee advisor, and then when I did like my interview, it was with Holly, and she joined us through a grad scheme when it was Parasols, and she was paraplanner here, and then did loads of different roles in Verve. She ended up being like the art of finance, she did some like exam training for people, but then she got to the point where she wanted to be an advisor, and it's like the one thing that we don't do. So then when I chatted with her, and I said, Scott had said something about how useful it had been going through paraplanning before advising. What do you think? She said you can always tell, looking at a file, which advisor used to be a paraplanner and which one didn't, because the ones that didn't, their files were rubbish. She really had to pull herself back. And we were at a conference yesterday actually and talking to a couple of people, and they've just been recruited through a grad scheme, and they're like, we have to do a bit of time paraplanning, but we want to advise. But because that came after your conversation with Scott, I feel like I've never got either of your opinions on the paraplanner route for an advisor. Do you have anything from your conversation? And then I'll come to the advisor.
So my opinions are purely formed. I'm just speaking on behalf of people over the decades, I've spoken to. And actually, I don't think there is. I think it is just up to the person. So you have a number of different personalities. I mean, look at somebody that might work in retail. It's not one person, and they don't have to have worked in a certain way. You get it with BDMs, who I've been one and have worked with them. You get some people who really value being highly technical. You get some people that are just, that their skill set is they are mega relationship people, and they go and find people to get the technical detail. In fact, and everyone in between. And I think that's what I hear from speaking to paraplanners and advisors. You get some, and that is their dream career. They want to be a paraplanner. They don't want anyone pushing them to be an advisor. In fact, they find it quite offensive, don't they? They're like, this is an amazing career. And they are, and we know that, they are worth their weight in gold. I have spent many years being asked by people, do you know any brilliant paraplanners?
Yeah.
And I think you've got people that move into advice, and for them, certain people, it is a really comfortable stepping stone because they really get to understand the full process. And Scott, I could totally see why that made sense for him and made him comfortable. And like Holly said, you want to be really good at those reports. Other people think, I want to change people's lives. I hate the analysis. I hate report writing. I hate the details, but I know exactly what needs to be done. And I'm an activist in that way, and I need a brilliant implementer. And those people can have the most beautiful partnership. So, I think it is unfortunately nuanced. I know like a soundbite would be amazing. I was like, yes, no.
How comfortable is that fence that you sat on?
But it is, I know, But it is, I mean, it's genuinely, we're all different people that have different experiences. And Hannah's probably got a lot more interesting viewpoint, actually, from...
One of the things that annoys me to no end about the concept of it being that essential step in the process is that it reinforces the idea that a paraplanner is a junior position, that it's just someone who just hasn't got enough knowledge to be an advisor yet. So I think for me, the concept of everyone being a paraplanner first, hard no. There's loads of people that kind of don't need to do it. They can, as you say, you know, they're amazing relationship managers. And actually, once you've kind of got that concept, if you're in a firm where there's an environment where you can bounce ideas off other people and there is that kind of open environment, there's no reason why there shouldn't be kind of, you know, the ability to just go out and advise straight away, especially if you do have exceptional paraplanners or just people that are doing your file checking that can sense everything and kind of make sure it's all in the right order. And I think that's one of the things that maybe some firms don't really appreciate about amazing paraplanners, amazing processes, is that actually how can we make it easy for people to come in and give great advice from the get-go, even when they haven't been super long in the tooth and they haven't gone through. And I also think to talk about the concept of rats files coming out of advisors, because having done both roles in different environments, I can say, yep, some advice files are created more equally than but I think that's a big challenge for how ops managers are working and how processes are designed within financial planning firms, because if you're getting crap advisor files, that's a learning and development need for your advisors. And how can we say that that's a tolerated issue? Why is it that firms are allowing that and just making do? Why is there not this controls and safeguards and honestly discipline amongst your advisors? Because if your advisors are coming in and they're making loads of money, yeah, sure, they bring in loads of, you know, assets under management, loads of fees in, but the compliance is having a headache and stuff is getting log jammed, then you're maybe needing to think about the key stakeholders in your firms and maybe kind of saying, well, actually, if you'd like to advise here and continue working in this amazing business environment, you need to pull your socks up because this isn't good enough. And that's something I've seen in loads of different firms.
So maybe the question isn't should everybody be a paraplanner, but should everyone have to go on a paraplanning boot camp for like 2 days? I would love that, because I love all of the client-facing relationship stuff, but I'm also a massive SWAT. So I would hate it if my files were wrong, but I wouldn't want to spend time doing it for a job. But I would love it, you know, if you were sent on a boot camp and they were like, this is what you've got to do to get everything right and get smiley faces.
One of the other topics that came up that kind of caused a bit of debate, I guess, around where it stands is like in terms of the level of qualifications. So obviously when RDR came in, you had to get to level 4. Some advisors stamped their feet, they didn't want to do it, they left the industry. I talked to David Tate at Redmail and said, do you think level 4 is enough? Do you think it's always going to be enough? Will they make it so that chartered is like the minimum standard? And then in the last episode, I spoke to Ali in Striver in Australia, and their kind of version of RDR, when that came in, they didn't just move them up to level 4. They said you have to have essentially a financial planning degree, and it meant going back to like a version of university for 3 years. If you were coming up and through and you were choosing your degree and there's a financial planning one, fine. But if you're a nurse or a teacher and you want to career change and you take 3 years out to go back and do a degree and then start back, he said it's such a block. What's your thoughts in terms of the level of qualification? Does it need to be raised? But also, if so, is there a risk that it's even more of a blocker?
Yeah, I mean, so much attention on the exams, as there quite rightly should be. It's very technical, we need to understand that. But we've all seen people who are incredible, the impact, the outcomes they have, and they might be at a minimum standard, qualification-wise. And we've seen people who are qualified to level 7, and their lack of empathy, their inability to understand and communicate, their inability to work with other people makes them completely ineffective. So that you do need to marry both. So I think having a standard where you've proved, you know, like with driving, that you're competent and capable of being safe on the road is what level 4 gives people. Yeah. I think we actually should be spending more time on what are those other skills, because RO3 is one people talk about, isn't it, that they find very difficult, you know, and I've spoken about the other skills that people really value from when you ask people in research, you know, we've done our own and there's many other versions of it, and it talks about peace of mind, someone to trust, someone who acts in my best interests, someone who understands me, somebody who caters to my unique needs. Yeah. Those are really hard skills to get. So they used to be, you know, they get talked about as soft skills, or they get talked about, it's like a nice to have. But with enough time and support and help, you can pass a tax exam. But if you don't have empathy, that can be really hard to ever get. Yeah. So I think we've got the minimum standard that works. If you want to become chartered or you want to do your level 7 like CFP and stand out in that way and specialise in that way, I think that's brilliant. You know, I did extra exams myself and got a huge amount of value from it, but I think we should also weigh that up with what is the CPD that we offer outside of the CFP, you know, that looks more at that financial planning side.
So I'm really anti-degree or course requirements. I hate the fact that so many vocational occupations now require people to obtain a degree. It's something that's not very well embedded within those systems. I think the key thing for me is the CPD requirements are massive. Like you think about actually the hours that we have to log, the ways in which we have to log them, and they're you know, the professional bodies, one of the things they do, I think, quite well is actually keep on top of making sure that the member bases are doing their CPD and are doing their professional development. I think to your point, exactly, the soft skills, the actual real difference makers, because at the end of the day, there are some clients who are going to come and, you know, have a experience and they're going to want to see the qualifications, the certificates on the wall. Actually, a lot of people, and I think more people than you'd expect, just want that person that they feel that they can trust and they feel like they have a connection with and they think that understands them and vibes with them. Because if we're talking about moving away from a product sales position, where it may be, you know, the product sales, you think, oh, actually the technical skill might be a bit more relevant, but actually that relationship development, that having someone feel safe and heard and that they have that trust relationship, that's very little to do with how you can sit through a set of exams. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about actually creating routes to get people, you know, to test their skills. That's not necessarily the formal environments that we're used to having as, you know, doing our qualifications as kids. But one of the things I would say that a lot of people might not know is that when you're advising, you have your annual reauthorization, you have your annual checks and testing. So even if on the outside of things, oh, you're just level 4, there are things in place where actually, if you're working for a good, robust firm, they are testing your technical knowledge, they are doing post-sale checks, they are making sure the quality of advice is coming through. And I think that's one of the things that, again, to say the regulation's probably doing a good job is that actually those structures are in place.
It does come down to, doesn't it, to what do people value, and is that reflected in our expectations? And like you said, you're with people, you're right there with them, they're, you know, you're sharing the most personal information, they're going through bereavements, could be really serious things as well, like economic abuse, difficult divorces, children with additional needs. There's some really complex, you know, heartbreak, redundancies, employment challenges, people setting up a new business. You know, how are we equipped to ensure that we take that responsibility, you know, really seriously?
And then there's loads of cases out there that are not super complex. They don't actually need huge amounts of technical knowledge. Like if you've got, you know, one of the kind of concepts when I was thinking about my return back into financial services was like, what would my dream job be? And I sometimes think maybe the paratrooper IFA. If you're in a smaller firm, actually, what would be wrong with having a really tech-experty paraplanner of IFA that kind of parachutes into your case when something really crazy happens? In the same way that you would rely on sort of like legal services and bits and pieces, other professionals, accountants, like I don't think I know any firms that do so much of that outside of their own worlds. Obviously, we do peer support, but that would be really interesting. Someone set up and say, like, I'm not super techie, but I love people. So if I get a techie case, I still want to look after the client. So maybe they actually outsource in the way that people do outsourcing with DB pensions.
We do that in Verve, so it's not, obviously we're not regulated, so it's not the advisors, but we split out our paraplanners that are very, like, this stuff's straightforward, you can like smash through it, like it's, you know, it's more volume than anything else, to you very technical people, and actually then you go, okay, well this is like really complex research, or I haven't done a business relief case for a long time, like that's where you're going to pull them in, and they're in that world. And I do think there is something around, you know, who's the one that's just, you know, project management or relationship management with the advisors versus who's the one who's like, nobody talks to me because I've got my head like 10 layers into like the most complex query ever. But right, that's amazing. I feel like we've just really started to tackle some of the overarching topics, and we can drill into a little bit more about your experience in the next section.
And now a word from our sponsors.
NewIn Podcast, supported by Royal London, the lead sponsor of the Verve Foundation.
What has surprised you most during your interviews? Ilana first.
I think the honesty. You know, when people know they're being recorded and they're being, people are going to hear it. You can sometimes hold back, or you sometimes can think, what do I want people to think, or what do I want people to hear, rather than how is it? And I absolutely love that did not happen, and it did mean that it was really powerful, really impactful. The things that people were sharing, the influences that drove them to do it. They weren't saying, that nice kind of like media wrapped, here's why I wanted to go into it.
Yeah.
It was things like deeply painful things like a bereavement, loss of parents, a real change in life and in circumstances. There might be a different person from a different background, but they understand how it feels to be uncertain. They understand how it feels. Scott says this quote that he's there in the supermarket one day and he just hears, there's got to be more than this. It's got to be more than this. And I said, that is something that so many people must have put in their life, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a job. But then it's, what is it that makes you go, and I'm going to find it?
Yeah.
And that's what they all spoke about.
Just think it, yeah. I'm surprised you most, Hannah.
I think the difference in like the percolation, how long it was for people to actually get to the point of being like, actually, this is something I'm definitely going to do. I think, just the variety of that surprised me. I thought it would be more kind of in line.
People always say, I fell into finance, and then we'll say, I fell into finance, just like everybody says they fell into finance, and then falling into finance has almost become like a cliche in and of itself. Do you think people do still fall into finance, or do you think there is more, I've seen that and I'm going to go and run at it?
Yeah, so I think there is so much more. I mean, maybe I'm in my own echo chamber now with who I follow on LinkedIn and working with you at the foundation. But I'm hearing so many people say, I want to do that, I could do that. And I know we've talked about this before. I don't necessarily know if it's true. I think we say it because it's quicker and easier than telling some of our difficult stories.
Yeah.
So we'll say, I just fell into it. And I said, I'll do that myself. I'd go, I just fell into finance because I was in the Isle of Man and that's what was there. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. I just couldn't afford to do what I wanted to do. I didn't have the cover to be able to move to the UK, go to university. So then I was like, but I do really want a career pathway. I want to earn as much money as I can and learn as much as I can and develop as much experience as I can. And I was like, financial services has every job in the world within it. So whether you want to be in advice, in customer services, in administration, in a technical role, in marketing, in IT, in graphic design, in products and proposition design, doesn't matter what it is, it's there. They'll pay for your exams quite often. So you can get qualified and then you've got all of these routes and you can travel with it as well, which I did.
Yeah.
So actually for me, it wasn't what I wanted to do initially, but then it became very intentional. But if someone asks me, how did you get into it? I'm not going to say that.
And I think it's the difference of, I didn't choose at the age of 14 that I went to be a financial planner and then create a career path up there. Yeah. So people think because I didn't do that, the only alternative is to say I fell into it. But as you say, you can still intentionally choose an industry that has got a lot of the boxes that you want it to take. It's just what's the definition of falling into?
And I think that makes people think as well it's for a certain type of person. And the research shows that in a lot of the least advantaged areas, particularly girls, are often restricted to about 3 different sectors. They don't even know, there's that phrase, you have to see it to be it. They don't know that exists. Whereas actually, you don't have to have gone to university. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to have done A-levels to get into financial services and get into an entry-level position that sets you on a pathway where so many opportunities, so many qualifications, and actually much higher income opportunities are available. So I do think that's one of the reasons it's really important to get rid of that tagline. It's something that is there for you.
What one moment from an interview, question for both of you, have you not stopped thinking about since that conversation? So you've already said a couple of specific quotes from a couple of people that kind of resonated with you, but is there one in particular that has kind of really stuck with you?
I think it is the sheer diversity of personality and character, and it makes it seem like everyone is really different, but actually they have the same values. So that is the golden thread, between people that look and sound completely different and are completely different and care about different things and lead different lifestyles, but those values really come together. So, for example, all of them have really understood the power of people, the power of relationships, the power of investing in relationships and how much it matters. And that's what you see. It's people who really understand the quality of the relationships in their own lives. Some of them that I've talked about, one of the things that first moved them to want to change jobs was so they'd have flexibility to be with their children more. That was the men, and to spend time with parents. And they want to do that. They want to help people live their best lives now and into the future. And, they believe in honesty, they believe in meaning. There's that real shared value system, I think, I found really interesting.
Can I have two?
Oh dear, go on.
I'll be quick with them.
Lana's like, well, fine, I've got two as well.
So there was a moment when I was talking to Tony in the first interview where he was basically sharing about how he'd had a lot of anxiety about coming back to financial planning and kind of starting his business. But I think it was really impactful hearing about when he actually got in touch with the foundation and actually going through that process sort of like alleviated some of that for him. I thought that was so powerful because I think it's so easy to get inside your own head, but actually one of the things that was brilliant about the incubator program was actually being given permission to do it. I think for a lot of people that makes a really big difference. And the other thing was when I was talking to Hayley and she was saying about all of her being shaken around in different restructurings, being made redundant, and her attitude towards that change just stunned me because it was like, well, how can I make something out of this? How can I upskill myself? How can I really use this, make lemonade out of lemons? Because for so many people that would, be a really sour experience. And I'm sure it would probably felt a little bit different flavoured when it was all happening and actually, but the way she was reflecting on that and how she's used those opportunities, that really struck me. And I think it's something you see in a lot of financial planning people, not just advisors, but across the profession, is like, we handle change really well.
Adaptability.
Yes.
Right, I've got one more question for each of you, and kind of, I guess, summarising the stuff that came out of your episodes. And so I'll start with you, Ilana. So you've heard so many stories from different people who've taken often a significant salary drop in order to retrain and kind of move into financial services. From what I took from your interviews, they were all happy that they'd made that change, despite the extra time, the extra effort, the short-term cost to them. So do you think from what you've heard from them, has that kind of changed your perception on it? What do you take from their experience?
Because personally for me, you try not to let your own thoughts and opinions ever get into it. You really just wanting to listen. But I think I did have those opinions because I was thinking, I don't think I could do that. If I was so successful in a career and had to just stop, how would I afford it? What would I do with the income? I don't have children to consider, but I've got a mortgage, so people have got all of these considerations. And I thought, our job is we want to showcase the pathways. And I thought, but I want them to be really honest, but are we going to be in this position where it just appears, oh, it's too hard? And that's not something that people could do. And that just wasn't the case. What I saw was probably the reason that they've all ended up becoming planners. It was planning. Actually, it was, all of them had this moment of, okay, there's more than this. I want to do something different. I've got an opportunity, for whatever the different reasons were, to do something. And each of them thought, how am I going to do it? And they all recognised uncertainty. And I was saying, again, as humans, we hate uncertainty. We would rather walk the wrong way than walk round a corner where we can't see round it, and you go in a straight line. And all of them were like, I know I want to do this. So they thought about, how would I have the income? How could I make sure I manage it? But they all had a pathway where they thought, okay, I'm going to get used to spending less. I'm going to make sure that I don't have debt. I'm going to make sure that I've got enough in cash. I'm going to do my exams at night. They all found a pathway to do it that really removed as much uncertainty as possible. And they all really committed and backed themselves to doing it. So I thought, God, in every single example here, and you'll have seen the same with the business owners, I'm sure, like you said, because they really thought about it for a long time, and they reduce that risk. So they were protecting their family, their lifestyle. And actually, it really reminded me that short-term pain, again, what all of them said is, okay, so I'm going to take an income drop for a little while, but I'm going to be working. Simon's saying he's 50, he's going to be working maybe for 20 more years. Scott was saying 25 years. Victoria said exactly the same, Ola. They've got decades to live. And it's actually given them much more flexibility and much more enjoyment and improved their relationships.
And Hannah, I guess from the business owner's perspective, so I am one of the worst people to talk to prospective business owners, because I'm always like, do it, it's the best thing ever. Like I can only personally for me run my own business now. Like I'm completely unemployable. But that's not to say that it's easy in any way, shape or form. And whenever we do the incubators, when we do the boot camps, I do a webinar the week before which talks about the realities of business planning, like running your own business, starting it and keeping it going, and it is bloody hard. What would you say has been kind of the experience of those who you've spoken to from like what their maybe expectations were of starting their own business? Like, isn't this going to be all glamorous and exciting, to like the reality of it?
I think some folks I spoke to clearly came in with the mindset of like, this is going to be a graft, but I can do it.
Yeah.
And then the people that had a bit of a longer journey, I think for them it was a case of really needing to have that support from their families. That was one of the key themes that I found. Certainly, when you're in a position where you've just had your first child or you're just about to have your second child and you're like, okay, I'm going to also have another baby. It's going to be called my business.
Yeah.
That is such a big ask, and having spoken to other people who founded financial planning practices outside of the podcast as well, it's such a common factor of having that support, whether that's from a partner, whether that's from other family members, or whether it's from a community. But one of the things that I think was hugely impactful was actually talking to people about the connections and network they found through financial services, and again, like through the incubator program, through the foundation, because I think that's one of the things that's such a key piece of it. And actually what you see in other kind of entrepreneur glam life that's smashed all over Instagram, which we all know is just gloss, right? So there's been a really great opportunity with the podcast to get that reality of things, and like to actually be like, no, there have been nights where I've not slept. But there have been nights, well, I mean, anyone who's purchased a large property and taken on a massive mortgage will probably, I'd say quite a few people have had sleepless nights of like, how am I going to afford to do this thing? But again, it kind of comes back to that concept of the power of financial planning, right? These people that are able to plan for that and think, well, actually, I can give myself another 6 months. I can give myself another 12 months like this. But it takes an incredible amount of support from others around you to do that and take that leap, because you can't do it in isolation, because you'll probably just have those moments and you'll just retract and go back.
I think what I love with kind of both those examples is that you've spoken to people who, as you say, it's like, this is the reality. It's hard work, whether starting the business or doing the studies, it's sleepless nights, it's a drop in income, whether because I'm changing career or because I've given up a guaranteed salary. But at every stage, they're still happy that they've done it, that they've kind of taken on the extra effort for, as you say, like potentially decades of a career in something that they now love, that they can impact other people, that their family can benefit from. It's kind of that, put the effort in, maybe take one step back, but you can take 10 steps forward. Well, that is it from us for this series. So just a massive, massive thank you from me to you both. Oh. The card's cute, but it's not as cute as this. Oh. For people who are listening and not watching, it's, Verve does Verve.
So when we said drink the champagne, do it today. I do. We both have to drive quite long drives back, so, but maybe tonight. Oh, thank you so much.
Honestly, no, thank you. You've both been absolutely phenomenal to work with, and I know everybody that you've interviewed has just really enjoyed it as well. We've had amazing feedback. But yeah, just a massive thank you from us for everybody that has joined in, that has watched and listened, that's shared. Thank you so much to everybody who's been on and shared their stories as well. I think Ilana just hugging the champagne. Obviously, huge thank you to our sponsor.
It looks like there's some sort of private jokes, doesn't it? Yeah.
Huge thank you to our sponsor. Huge thank you to Second Draft for their incredible work as always, cutting out all of my nonsense when I do my interviews. And for everybody who's been part of it. Hopefully see you in series 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
If you're interested in joining one of our advisor programs, or being a supporter of our mission, then head on over to vervefoundation.co.uk.